So, and I think the emergent behaviour of users or audience members suggests that actually there is something that's in between here and here, which I've thought about, or they're performing with their phones and taking private content out into public spaces in a way which never happened before. People always spoke about private things, but you know, the interesting thing now is that that happens on the street, or that happens online and is you know, publicly very visible, or visible in a different way. I don't think that makes it wrong or bad or anything, but I think those things provide opportunity, and I'm looking for those sort of shapes. I don't know if that.
But to build on this, these cultural implications,
yeah.
And you worked a lot on the identity,
yeah.
And how actually technology shaped our identity,
yeah.
And possibly our social interactions.
Yeah.
Maybe you know, if you comment on this aspect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it's sort of one of the exciting things about the technology, our ability to be able to sort of play and fictionalize and re-identify ourselves. And I think we've always done that. But I think this gives us sort of other opportunities to try things out, to try behaving in other ways, to try to pretend being, you know, whatever it is, different genders or so on. And I think, you know, we slip between those modes very fluidly, and we slip between different modes of performing from here to over where you're sitting right now. We have a very sort of fine ability to slip between things. But I think I don't think because technology allows you to play with that, that's necessarily shifting our identity. I think, you know, I think Rob might think differently, I'm not sure. But I think how we know who we are or what we do or what we would like to do is about trying things out. And one of those things is through our identity. And if we go to see, you know, 100 love films or romantic comedies at the cinema, well, we might not be having 100 romantic comedy sort of situations, but somewhere in our minds we're playing that out, we're kind of taking that on board, and we are sort of thinking, okay, so, you know, what does that mean to me, what does that mean to me, what does that mean to me? And we've done that by looking, you know, with photography, looking at the image, it kind of reflects back on us, and the same way with technology, it provides opportunities to play with who we are or who we could be, and I think that's very positive. Yeah.
What about a question to both of you? What is either an ideology in interactive media?
Well, I have to go back a little bit and then say how I got involved in this Internet of Things and ambient intelligence, which boils down to this question of identity. And so I went to a conference in 2000 in Jönköping in Sweden. It was Intelligent Information Interfaces, and it was a beautiful European Union program, IQ, Intelligent Information Interfaces. Great, very well thought out. You had a school, you had a company, and you had a bunch of artists and designers, and they worked together. And unfortunately, it has not taken off further, but it was sort of stopped and stayed in the companies. And but there was this conference, and I was in the morning. I was there. I was running. I jogged across the lake. There was a lake, there was a bit of mist, I saw King Arthur's sword coming out of the lake. I felt it was quite natural to do that. I walk into the conference, it's packed, 200 people, the brightest of European coders and programmers, all Fraunhofer people, all coming from sort of like all the labs were there. And that guy comes up and he says, well, in 10 years' time, you're all going to have a Bluetooth ring. You will walk in the woods. You will see a tree. You will want to know more about that tree. You point your ring, and a screen will pop up and will show you about the tree. I wanted to shoot him on the spot. I was really thinking, he needs to be shot on the spot. Because this is very, very dangerous. And I was looking around me, and nobody actually reacted. And I thought, so this is the code to the times. And I think artists, autonomous artists, want to go to the code of the time. Because they realize how flimsy and how sort of fleetingly it is. You sniff it. And what I saw and what I sort of felt was that there were people, very bright people, scientist people, who were willing to sort of leave the reality that we have and leave. I'm not going to hug a tree, but I don't want to walk in the wood and be mediated with screens, with trees. And I also realized that this group of people was going to build this mediating interface between a set of databases on the one hand algorithms that sort of they hold, and they can sort of have access to, not a general audience, also your citizens, and trees and actual like sort of the pavement where we walk on. Sort of and what has happened from then on till now is that we realize that with RFID, which is kind of the glue to this whole system, is that the next generation will grow up. And for me, if I have an RFID tag on my jacket or on my shirt, it's still a shirt plus an RFID. A radio frequency identification. It's the sort of the 1947 we had the barcode, and sort of it identifies products with numbers, but it's just doing this in batches of like 1,000 or 10,000. 1991, Neil Gershenfeld got RFID under the penny cost, and is now, so the thinking is now that within the next 5 years there will be an ecology of radio frequency identification, 2D barcodes, 3D barcodes, and the IP46, the new internet domain address system, which will sort of, which with that you'll be able, without GPS or any other systems, or without even wireless or GSM, to sort of have a very, very good view of any object that's sort of around you anywhere. And again, the question is, where are the readers that are reading this, and where are all who is writing the algorithms to control all this flow of data back into scenarios?
You know, I mean, my sort of response to things like that is, well, like, you know, we will put stuff in everything, and we are doing that. In the same way that we've kind of put print all over everything, and you know, it was a big threat probably when it first took off. But also people started to use it differently. So, you know, if I had the chip and in those two things, I could think of, you know, 100 things that I could do with it, which would be an opportunity rather than just use it as it was intended. And so we're not passive. I don't believe that we're passive. I believe that sort of consumers or audiences are very smart people, and sometimes, of course, that's very obedient, and you know, audiences are often the people who most want to be obedient and do the thing that they're being told to do. But you know, I suppose in a way that none of us really want to look the fool, none of us really want to look like the person who can't do it, who can't get it. So I don't have, you know, I feel at a sort of very human level that that's okay too. You know, I sort of, you know, I kind of feel, yeah, I feel sort of more optimistic, really.
I'm really optimistic too. I mean, I mean, the fact that we're here debating this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the first time that, and again, I have to stress it, simple. That we will definitely have to need some new relationships between industry, government, institutions, and citizens, and there'll be going to be lots of conflicts. And I think, especially companies like Google, have to take up much more responsibility for society and much more responsibility for political issues, because actually they're going to already shaping a lot of these issues. So
it seems to me what class theory is doing is making people aware that it is possible to use some of those tools in different ways. So in a way, you're both working more or less in the same direction. My question for the Untitled series is what needs to be done to ensure that more artists have the possibility to do that? Because let's face it, what you're not doing is going into a closed space, getting some public subsidy for producing something which is then played 10 times in one city and toured to 16 other cities, all the time with people buying tickets, all the time with the possibility for you to make a copyright income from that. So you're also experimenting with a new economic model. But what needs to be done so that more artists are able to experiment with these?
Yeah, I think something to do, for me, there's something to do with education, which is to do with the fact that, you know, people are very tech literate, and I think the sort of the proposition, you know, one of the propositions might be that people are educated to question in a way their literacy through an education model, and I think when we teach quite a lot, we mentor quite a lot, and I think that sort of interrogation of the idea and what it means, and creating interesting or new forms is a thing that sometimes I think needs to kind of move on. I think education at a basic level sometimes needs to move on in a way that we were taught traditionally how to read painting and how to do painting, and then came conceptual painting and breaking the frame and all of those things. I think sometimes a more critical frame within universities might, I don't know, encourage artists to take it on. I think artists learning, for me, it's always about artists learning from the public what they're doing, and I think seeing what the public are doing is something that, again, a sort of a traditional view of art, or certain fine arts would be that the audience isn't important, that you make your work not in isolation, but that you make it and it stands alone. And I think learning what the public are doing as an aid to improving your artwork or developing your artwork, I think is important for me.
I'm very much interested in the question what makes people happy, and I'm also in favor of the old philosophers who says that it's social relation, and I think it's confirmed by many analyses so far. So what do you think about this, how it contributes, or it in what way, or what experience do you have?
Well, as I said, I tried to smuggle the words love and friendship into this text, and they're actually in there. So I think that is, for me, it's the biggest sort of achievement to use these words and bring them in, get them out of the advertising context.
But not only the words.
No, but it's one step, right? Because we need to get the words like friendship, words like love, which completely sort of tainted your love, your new washing machine, things like that. We need to get them back into our sort of vocabulary of really.
Obviously things are changing because people are occupying those spaces and their relationships are in those spaces, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're less happy, or I think they're differently happy or differently exploring relationships. For a long time we probably had relationships long distance which were through letters, and were we less happy? Was that more remote? Did we manage successful relationships? Yes, we did. So I don't feel that technology provides a sort of barrier to sort of successful relationships or being happy at all. And potentially, the people who are the social network occupants, are a mobile force of potentially incredibly influential people, and I think they're very interesting, and their patterns of behaviour and shifts and modes of behaving, of course, are being recognised by companies. They're being recognised by artists and so on. But I think that it's maybe they didn't kind of create the software themselves, but there's a need perhaps that companies have recognised, and of course some of that is economic, and I'm not naive, but that I think there's something that people are trying to do that's very, very interesting. And I don't know whether people try to make themselves happy or try to make themselves have more meaningful purpose and place in this world. I would sort of say that would be, as an individual, my aim is to not necessarily try to be happy, it's to try to understand things more and have a more meaningful engagement with perhaps, so I'm not, it depends what you see your job as being and doing.
And that, I think, in itself is a very important driver for feeling sort of happy or unhappy. And I agree with that. Happiness in this term may be sort of overrated in a way, because it's like fleeting moments, and if you search for it, you just get addicted to something. But it does say something, I think, about the state of our society at the moment, that people feel so afraid, or sort of feel this kind of inconvenienced, or are asking for more cameras in cities where basically nothing happens.
Joe, you want to?
I think so. I don't know that I'm going to answer it at all, but I think the way I see things going forward a little bit is culturally I see that games are probably to the 21st century what the printed material was, or photography was to the 20th century. So I think I'm not sure where that's going or what that is, but it's certainly the form I think in terms of mass use and mass understanding and liveness and interaction and potentially development of more meaningful content, and I hate that word content as if it's something that you put into a vessel. I don't really mean it like that. I think there's something there that needs to be watched or developed. I still worry that sort of what you're talking about, Rob, is as if all these people, because they don't have a eye-to-eye contact, that people are in some way powerless, and we all use tools which are served to us in various ways, and people of different generations are using them differently, so we might not all be sort of anarchists about to revolt, but I'm sure the people in their 20s aren't sort of passive, and they're very intelligent beasts, and not just,
I'm not contradicting that at all. So we're going to have, I think, to hard code a lot of the things into the devices, and I'm really wanting a European Union device. I really want a European Union phone, to hard code all these socialists in it, because probably if you have a TomTom, it's directing you through a lot of Texaco stations. You don't know. Texaco might sort of pay a lot of money to be in there, and if you're in a particular route, you just go to Texaco. Well, I think with this device, that if you want to go from A to B, and your aunt is living in a neighborhood, you have to visit her. And if you don't visit her, you just don't get to.
But you know that she lives there, and you've got a brain that works it out.
Well, yeah. Well, I think but we say we have these systems because people need a helping hand. So then I think we need to have new systems to give people helping hands.
Yeah.
If people are less used to making choices of quality, then does that lead to a state of confusion and a state of loneliness, as many people predict? Or are you more optimistic? Maybe to start with you, actually.
Yeah, I don't think that people are making choices of less quality, or I think people are making choices differently. Would be my view, and I think people are making very meaningful choices in a way. We are just exploring relationships with each other in a different world now. It sounds like an old grandma speaking. Any tool that we use has potential function, potential personality, dysfunction, fallibility, and I'm alive to all of that. So the different sort of tools provide different opportunities or problems, really. But I just don't think that we make less meaningful decisions. I can't actually believe that as a person. If I talk about my own ideologies, I can't wake up every morning and go, I live in a world where I'm making less meaningful choices than somebody 30 years ago who was much more of a political beast than me, potentially. I wake up thinking, well, in my small way as an artist or as an individual, I can attempt to make some sort of minor modicum shift for myself, or in the sort of product that I make. That's my job, and if I thought that what I was doing was less meaningful, I wouldn't ever get up again. Well, I think we're alive.
I think we stop there unless somebody wants to intervene. I'd like to thank our two guests, Drew and Rob, and I wish you a very good weekend.